What if I told you our whole modern way of learning might be just plain wrong? Today, we're going to dive into a forgotten worldview, a time when things like art and science and philosophy, they weren't just separate subjects you'd find in a textbook. No, they were all seen as these intertwined threads in one single, absolutely magnificent tapestry of knowledge.
So, let's kick things off with a pretty modern idea. This quote, it's part of a recent argument for an educational law over in Spain. The basic idea? We should cut back on music in schools because, well, it's a distraction. And you know, on the surface, that sounds logical, right? It sounds efficient, specialized. But what if that whole way of thinking is actually brand new? And maybe, just maybe, it's a huge step backward?
Okay, now, to see what I mean, just look at this. This is an emblem from way back in 1640, and it tells a completely different story. What you're seeing is a swan, which, by the way, was sacred to the god Apollo, and it's holding both a royal scepter and a lyre. We're talking 400 years ago, and the message couldn't be clearer. The art of ruling and the art of making music were seen as equally important. So, what on earth changed?
All right, let's dig into this. That old worldview is captured perfectly in this emblem's motto. And believe me, it was a powerful, almost radical idea about how everything fits together, all embodied in these two simple objects, the scepter and the plectrum.
So, horil sceptro et horil plectro. It basically means sometimes the scepter, sometimes the plectrum. And you have to understand, this was a pretty bold statement back then. The guy who came up with this, a diplomat named Saavedra Fajardo, was making a really powerful argument. He was saying that the skill it takes to rule a whole kingdom and the skill it takes to create beautiful harmony on a lyre, well, they weren't just compatible. He saw them as equal. For him, a truly good leader had to have a handle on both.
And look, this wasn't just some one-off, quirky, artistic idea from one guy. Fajardo was not alone in thinking this way. Centuries before him, the super-influential scholar Saint Isidore of Seville put it even more bluntly. For him, music wasn't a distraction, it was the foundation of everything. The big question is, why? How could that be?
Well, the answer lies in a connection that honestly seems completely alien to us today. See, back then, music wasn't just, an art form. It was treated as a science, and more specifically, a branch of mathematics.
Okay, so let's try a little brain teaser straight from the Middle Ages. You know the arithmetic mean, right? The average. But have you ever heard of the musical mean? This was a real thing, a real calculation they used, and it perfectly shows just how deeply these two subjects were fused together. So here's the puzzle for you. How could the number 8 be the musical mean of 6 and 12?
So how in the world does this work? Well, the logic is totally different from our simple average. It's all about ratios and proportions. You see these steps here, you find the difference, you square it, and so on. This was their way of mathematically describing the pleasing sounds, the intervals you hear in music, like an octave. I know, it feels kind of strange to us. But for them, this wasn't just some abstract math problem. It was literally a formula for beauty. It captured the harmony they heard in a song and the harmony they saw in the perfect geometry of a building.
And this image, wow, it just brilliantly illustrates that fusion. Now, you might think this is the muse of music or something, but nope. This is a 17th century depiction of arithmetic. She's literally wearing a dress made of musical notes. Why? Because in this worldview, numbers themselves had a kind of music to them, a divine harmony and perfection.
Okay, so if music was math and ruling was an art, what was education like? Well, I can tell you, it definitely wasn't about sitting in a classroom memorizing a bunch of facts in separate subjects. The whole goal was to learn through delight, through playful discovery.
For a perfect example, just check out this design for what they called a philosophical garden. The motto, Dilettanto insegna, says it all. It teaches by delighting. This wasn't just some pretty park to stroll through, oh no. This was an interactive classroom, a physical space ingeniously designed to teach a ton of different subjects all at once, probably without the student even realizing they were being taught.
I mean, just imagine you're a young prince walking through this garden. The lessons are literally all around you, totally integrated. You'd learn botany just by looking at the plants. You'd pick up geometry from the pentagonal shapes of the flower beds. You'd get a lesson in astronomy from that armillary sphere in the middle. And you'd even learn about military fortifications from the star-shaped walls. It was an entire education, all cleverly disguised as a pleasant walk.
But here's the thing, the real lesson was even deeper. The garden wasn't just a garden, it was a metaphor. The student was the garden.
Just like the plants needed to be carefully cultivated and tended to, so did the human spirit. The ultimate goal was to learn your place in the universe, to see yourself as this tiny reflection, a microcosm, of the giant harmonious macrocosm of the cosmos.
So this whole idea of a totally interconnected universe, this giant philosophical garden of knowledge, it really reached its absolute peak in the mind of one guy. And let me tell you, he was maybe the most brilliant and definitely one of the most eccentric figures of the entire 17th century. A man who truly believed he could see the secret knots connecting everything. And this is it. This is the frontispiece from a book by that man, Athanasius Kircher. This is basically his entire worldview crammed onto a single page. That Latin motto says it all. All things are connected by secret knots. And you can see it right there in the drawing. Theology, philosophy, astronomy, music, medicine, they're all literally chained together, all part of one grand, unified system.
And Kircher didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. I mean, the man was interested in everything. We're talking about a geologist who literally climbed down into the crater of Mount Vesuvius while it was active. He was one of the first people to look at blood under a microscope. He wrote about optics, acoustics, math. He invented talking statues and musical machines. He even tried to translate Egyptian hieroglyphs. Got it totally wrong, but hey, he tried. He just didn't see any boundaries between different fields. To him, it was all just one giant, fascinating puzzle.
But, and this is a big but, his passion for finding connections sometimes led him a little astray. Take this, for example. It's Kircher's design for an incredible sunflower clock. His theory was that since sunflowers track the sun across the sky, they must be moved by some kind of magnetic force. So he figured, why not harness that force to tell time? It's a beautiful poetic idea, right? Connecting biology, astronomy, and magnetism. And this wild idea caught the attention of none other than the famous philosopher René Descartes. And right here, this is where you see the clash of two entire worlds. Descartes, one of the fathers of the new scientific method, he didn't just think, oh, what a lovely idea. Nope, he tested it. He actually built the thing. And his conclusion was so simple, so dry, and so devastating. In that one little sentence, you can almost feel an entire worldview, one built on beautiful, poetic connections, starting to just crumble under the cold, hard weight of experimental evidence. So yeah, the world of Descartes, this world of specialization, of testing things, of verifiable facts, that's the world we live in now. But it makes you wonder, in gaining all that scientific precision, did we lose a different kind of wisdom along the way? And that brings us right back to where we started. See, in our modern, hyper-specialized world, it can seem perfectly logical to call music a distraction from the so-called important subjects like math or science. We've basically put all our knowledge into separate, little, tidy boxes.
But here's the thing, not everyone agrees with that approach. While a country like Spain is debating cutting music, Switzerland has gone in the complete opposite direction. They've actually made high-quality music education a constitutional right for every single child because they believe it's absolutely fundamental to their development.
And what's really amazing is that modern science, the very world Descartes helped create, is now starting to prove those old thinkers right. A neurologist named Facundo Manes has described how music isn't some isolated skill at all. When we engage with music, our brains, they just light up like a firework display. It engages nearly everything at once: emotion, expression, social skills, math, language, memory, the whole shebang. And get this, he even hypothesizes that music might have evolved for a very specific social reason, to help us move together, to synchronize our actions. In other words, to foster the exact kind of unity and harmony that those thinkers back in the 17th century saw as the foundation of a good society. Music literally binds us together.
So all of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating question, doesn't it? In our modern world of specialized experts, in our drive to dissect everything into smaller and smaller pieces, have we lost the ability to see the whole picture? What kind of wisdom have we lost by forgetting that all knowledge, all things, might just be connected by secret knots?